Now it is time to recite together the words of our covenant, the document that connects us as Unitarians. Ted will put the words up on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. As mentioned previously, our theme for today is refugees, people like you and me. I'd like to introduce the theme by reading the lyrics of Dave Dobbin's Welcome Home song. Dobbin felt inspired to write this song after an anti-migrant march in Christchurch. He wrote it to welcome migrants to this country, but it seems to fit the welcoming of former refugees even better. People who've been forced out of their home countries, mostly due to war, and then come to a new, safe land. Welcome home. Tonight I am feeling for you under the state of a strange land. You have sacrificed much to be here. Therefore the grace as I offer my hand. So welcome home. I bid you welcome. I bid you welcome. Welcome home from the bottom of my heart. Out here on the edge, the empire is fading by the day, and the world is so weary in war. Maybe we'll find that new way. So welcome home. See, I made a space for you now. Welcome home from the bottom of our hearts. Welcome home from the bottom of our hearts. There's a woman with her hands trembling, haere mai, and she sings with a mountain's memory, haere mai. There's a cloud the full length of these isles, just playing chase with the sun, and it's black, and it's white, and it's wild, and all the colours are one. So welcome home, I bid you welcome. We bid you welcome. Welcome home from the bottom of our hearts. Welcome home. See, I made a space for you now. Welcome home from the bottom of our hearts. Okay. Te Āhuru Mōwai, these beautiful kopu given to us for the name of the centre mean a welcoming, safe sanctuary. Much nicer, I feel, than the English words. Okay, this first slide shows you a picture taken a few years ago during the rebuild of the centre. You might be able to see in this bottom section here are a collection of army huts. This was an American rest and recreation site during World War II, and apparently it housed 1,000 soldiers. So this whole site, all the way up to here, this hedge, and almost the same area of land behind were covered in these barracks. So those barracks were the original centre, replaced about 8 years ago by this new centre here. This block here is the administration block, and all of these blocks, they're two-storey accommodation blocks. Over here somewhere is Middlemore Hospital and King's College, and in this direction is the airport. Just to remind you of the definition of a refugee, if you want to read that quietly you can, but the key point of the definition is that in order to be deemed a refugee by the United Nations, You need to be outside of your home country and unable to return because you fear that you will be persecuted or killed because of that list of human rights areas listed there, race, religion, nationality, and so on. In this picture here too, I just show a typical United Nations refugee camp. These camps are normally sited on borders, and that's where people escape to when they are fleeing from their land. The camps pretty quickly become unhygienic, unsafe, unpleasant sites, and many people live there for years, if not decades. I've written here a couple of quotes, well, more than a couple, that I've taken from the writing of refugees while they were at Mangere in telling about their journey before arriving at the centre. After a long journey of suffering, after experiencing discrimination and the killing of our fellow citizens, we have fear in our souls. I waited for 5 years in a country where I was treated like a criminal, yet I had committed no crime. I left a country at war. The war slowly destroyed our homes, our country, our lives. We are so tired of war. We had two choices, to face death or to flee. We've suffered hugely. I had to run for my life. I lived 7 years in a neighbouring country, waiting and waiting, hoping. We've all experienced difficult lives. Now at last we can have hope for a safe and peaceful future. We will obey the laws and do our best in every way to contribute to this country. We thank the New Zealand government and the Māori people for accepting us into this beautiful country. Now, a lot of those quotes come from the speeches given by representatives of each community at the end of each intake period. And they sort of echo some of the sentiments actually in Dave Dobbin's song too, and they're pretty typical. These get repeated over and over again. They were translated by our interpreters. Okay, so another view now of the main reception area. This top area here houses New Zealand immigration staff. They've got a huge office. The bottom area are the health teams, so physical health and mental health. In this area here is a reception area and a hall, stretching all the way over here. And then this is the dining area. And up the top is the staff area and meeting rooms. And this area here are sort of recreation rooms and time-out rooms, but not used very often mainly because of poor design, really. It's a view of the hostels, and you can see there's sort of a living area here in these central spaces, and then on either side are 2 to 4 bedrooms and a bathroom. These are the countries that refugees have come to New Zealand from in recent years. The countries in red are the more recent countries, including now again Afghanistan. You can see they sort of reflect the hot spots around the world of war and dysfunctional government. So what happens before people come to New Zealand? They're all assessed under the UN Convention to ensure they're legitimate refugees, and then there is a robust security screening process. Many have lived in camps. The longest group who'd lived in camps during the time I was at Mangere were the Bhutanese people who had been ethnically cleansed out of Bhutan and had been living on the border of Nepal for 23 years. So as you can imagine, people lived and died in those camps. The average time for refugees waiting, and you'll recall that quote, waiting and hoping, is 11 years. New Zealand only accepts health cases that Te Whatu Ora can manage, so if we have big queues within our own country for certain health conditions, we don't accept refugees with those conditions. All the agencies on site receive dossier notes on each individual or each family. The mental health team, more personal notes, and the other teams, more general notes. Before people even arrive in New Zealand, the resettlement areas, so the towns and cities that they're going to settle into, are mapped out in advance. And what we try to do in New Zealand is place people in support communities. In the early years of refugee settlement in New Zealand, there was a policy of pepper potting people around, and the belief was that people would integrate or really assimilate more easily if they were on their own. And that was a really unsuccessful experiment. It resulted in people either moving towards the towns where other family members or similar language group members were living, and there were a lot of suicides and a lot of ill health. So now people are grouped together in support groups, and I'll show you shortly the cities they go to. The resettlement areas, there used to be only 3, Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and now there are 14. And before areas can be added to the list, they must be able to provide housing. So a lot less people, as you can imagine, have been coming to Auckland in recent years. Employment, ESOL, English language education, healthcare and settlement support. There's a little picture of some staff and some largely former refugees. There's an AUT staff member there. Okay, these are the resettlement communities. 7 in the North Island, 7 in the South Island. Some of them just quite recently added, only in the last few years. And some receive small numbers of refugees and others much larger, depending on their capacity. I should say, with all the photos that I'm showing you, we never, certainly the AUT team, never show photos that we don't have permission from the individuals to show. So you'll notice there are quite a few photos of children, because families often give permission for their children's photos to be taken, and we ask if we can use them for educational purposes, which is why I never give them to other people. And often adults feel that they are quite vulnerable if their photos are shared, because family members back home could be tortured or killed if it became known that they had come to another country. So, the permissions are often given for children who are least recognisable. What I do love, and what I always loved about the centre, was the diversity. Every day, that experience of diversity is really wonderful. This was a family day that we had over a weekend at the centre. Quite a few charities would offer to do things, and we would suggest the types of things that might be appropriate, and one group organised this family day with a whole lot of play activities. It was really lovely. One of the big things that refugee children have not had prior to coming to New Zealand is a childhood, a playful childhood. They often haven't experienced play. But you can see how quickly they become just like Kiwi kids. So just in a nutshell, just to tell you about New Zealand's program, so 1,500 refugees annually. It's a very small number compared to the number of migrants we have had in previous years, and I think we're currently experiencing this, about 1,000 migrants a month. So 1,500 refugees per year is not a high number. They all stay at Te Āhuru Mōwai for 5 weeks. That's the quota program. The site is managed by MB, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, and there are 5 agencies working on site: the health agency, education, immigration, mental health, and then the agency providing the accommodation and catering services. Each intake has about 215 individuals. They currently stay there for 5 weeks. It used to be 6, but with the increase in number and the lack of ability to increase the buildings on the site, they made the intake period shorter and take more people per intake. And then they moved to the 14 centres around the Motu. I'm just going to flick through some slides and just let you become familiar with the centre visitors. The centre welcomed a lot of important visitors, a lot of overseas visitors. We had big groups, for example, coming from one country. I recall the German politicians coming, about 12, and meeting at the centre, having a look around and then talking to staff. Almost every Prime Minister in New Zealand has been there. The immigration ministers, they get invited to come. Sometimes they come just once. I recall one immigration visitor who came to every single farewell ceremony. This visit here by Jacinda was to welcome this group of families here who had been invited under a special program to join family members in Christchurch who had had family members killed in the mosque tragedy. And I remember they were the most beautiful, wonderful families, and it was such a sad, sad occasion because one of the families in Christchurch had only been here a few months, and the father and son were killed in the mosque. The other son was wounded, and when he came back with his family for this special event, a tree planting memorial event, he said to me when I asked him how he was doing, he said, "I wish I'd been the one who'd been killed and not my father and brother." Really sad. Jacinda, she was a special visitor, and I'm just going to play you this tiny little clip because she spoke from her heart, off the cuff, no script, and you can see how warm and welcoming she is. It's just a tiny little clip. Okay, I won't worry about that. The thing too that was interesting is I mentioned the design of the centre. There were 2 designs for the centre. The first architectural company invited all the managers on site to contribute their ideas to the design, but unfortunately their design was too expensive. So this alternative one was chosen. It's good. It's a beautiful site with lovely buildings, but the hall was oblong with the stagey area in the middle of the long bit. So anyone who came to speak would either talk to the centre of the room and forget all the people on either side. And Jacinda did this the whole time, talking to everyone, which was really lovely. Okay, now the school. So the school's run by AUT. These were fairly new buildings, and each block is a modern learning environment. You might have heard recently that they've been criticised. We were lucky enough to have input in this design, and you'll see we've got a lot of glass windows on either side. These are the staff offices in these little bays here, but big windows all the way along to enable parents who felt concerned about their children being taken away by strange adults to look in as they went by to their own rooms so they could check and see what was happening in the rooms. And we also requested a lot of glass sliding doors so that we could cut off spaces as needed. The playground, which has more recently had a lot more, it's got more seating around it, and it was beautifully painted with a whole lot of games like snakes and ladders and little alphabet things for children to play on while they were in their playtime. But the lovely thing about it is this is a school for whole families. It's a whānau school, so you've got adults, secondary kids, primary, and even little preschoolers running around in the breaks. these kids had obviously made some sort of headband in their class. And these little name badges, immigration required that everybody wear them all the time. It wasn't a concern for us, but if you're wondering what they are, that's what they are. They've got their number on them. And actually, I don't think their name, I think just a number, case number. So we obviously never used that information. And here you can see, the veranda alongside the classrooms. We were funded by the Ministry of Education, which is the government arm that funds early childhood, primary and secondary, but they also funded the adult program. We had a special contract with them. You can see the classrooms are beautifully decorated. Something that is interesting about working at the Refugee Centre was we hardly ever had any damage, hardly ever any graffiti, virtually no thefts. I think it reflected really how much everybody valued what they were receiving in the program, but that was lucky for us because it meant the funding could be used to get beautiful equipment. And it was always my philosophy that you show people how much you honour them by the environment that you provide. And so we always sought to provide a welcoming, comfortable, warm, safe environment. And you can see, actually we got a furniture grant with the new classroom, so that's why all the furniture was new. This picture here is week 1. Now this actually was in the old classrooms, but it serves a useful purpose in the comments I'm going to make now. You can see the anxiety and fear on people's faces. And naturally, they fear anyone in authority. Everyone in authority in their past has let them down, from government to army to police, medical providers, even teachers have let them down. And so they don't trust anyone, and so they shouldn't. We need to allow them to learn how to trust us by being trustworthy. So this is week 1. So this is me giving the welcome talk in week 1. And then this is week 6 when we have the farewell, and look at the difference in the faces. And you know, these are not fake photos. I recall this group because I particularly recall these 3 girls in the front, and the 3 of them were sitting on 2 chairs. Obviously this group here were predominantly Burmese background, and the girls have got those sort of mud packs that they put on their faces, certain parts of the world, and especially in Burma, which we know are very good for your skin, but they also provide sun protection, but sort of a beauty product as well. So they'd had their faces done for the farewell, and these necklaces that they'd all made in class. But these girls who were giggling and laughing and fighting over these 2 seats, just gorgeous. This is another similar type of picture. The primary teacher gave me these 2 photos and said, look at these pictures here. This girl here arrived with a deeply traumatic background. She made no eye contact and hardly spoke for the first 3 weeks, either to teachers or to fellow students. And this is the same girl in week 4. Look how beautiful she is, and you know, hugging this boy here, but so much more confidence. The education program run by AUT has an early childhood centre, primary and secondary classes. The adult classes, there's 3 days of English lessons, and everybody's levelled according to the English level on arrival, and 2 days of settlement classes which are delivered by a speaker or a teacher and interpreters. So this is information on housing, the law, education, health provision, the environment, caring for the environment, services in New Zealand. The police come in and give a talk, and also there's a talk on Te Ao Māori, which they really love, and you could see from that comment in the speech, thanking the Māori people for welcoming them. Most refugees, especially after they've done the tikanga program, really identify strongly with New Zealand's First People, and their values and practices are often similar, but they tend to thank the first people for inviting them into their country, which is really lovely. We also ran an after-school program which was for the primary kids, and that enabled parents to attend things like counselling sessions and meetings with immigration and so on. So this is an example of a bit of an unruly settlement class, and you can see interpreters here, there's Amy there, and possibly another over here, doing the interpreting. So our interpreters and our staff are trained to work together, basically giving a sentence, and then there's this cacophony of sound as all the interpreters simultaneously interpret that sentence to their group, and people just get used to picking out their own language from this group. But we do seat people together in language groups. The adult classes, this woman here, I particularly recall her. She was from Afghanistan, and she was a well-educated woman, and she had been running classes for women on literacy and healthcare. And she arrived, this was in the first round of the Taliban management of the country. She arrived home and found that her husband had been killed because of her work, and a note left saying, "You and your son will be next." So she had to flee. An amazing woman. She was just fabulous at the centre, and told us her story. And I don't know what she's doing. She came with her little 4-year-old boy, but yeah, incredibly resilient, wonderful person. I'm sure she'd do wonderful things in this country too. Yeah, so a lot of our teaching is very hands-on, collaborative, and sort of personalised. The primary classroom, as I mentioned before, everybody arrives feeling unsafe. The children every now and then really needed little safe places, and our primary teachers brought 2 of these little teepee tents, and you can see there's a teddy bear inside there. Sometimes there's books or a toy. And if a child felt they needed to have a bit of time out, with these kids you can't put them into a separate room because that triggers memories of parents being taken away to little separate places. So this tent provided a safe environment where they could still hear what was going on around them, but just sit in there for a little while and feel like they were on their own and not frightened by all the noises around them. This guy here, that's Rob, who was one of the police officers who delivered amazing talks. As I said, trying to educate groups about being able to trust the police in New Zealand. And this woman, police officer here, he was training. So he would give his 3-hour talk to the adults, and then would go to the primary classes and give a little talk to the children to help them learn to trust the police. You know, and just that one visit of 2 police officers talking to a group, that very personal interaction was incredibly powerful in recreating a sense of security in New Zealand's police force most of the time. And you can see he brought along all these clothes for the kids to dress up in, and anyone who wanted a photo taken was allowed to. We had a very close relationship with the Newmarket Rotary Club, and they always donated fabulous things. So this was a group of kids who received for several intakes. We were able to give school bags to every single school child, and look at them, so proud and happy to receive those gifts. You won't hear the sound of this, but I'm just going to play this little clip. This actually was in our temporary classroom block while the new classrooms were being built, and the after-school program was run here. So this was a grassed and a paved area in the centre of the classrooms, and I just want you just to look at how beautifully the children are dressed. You know, I mean, the parents go to so much trouble. These kids sometimes have 2 outfits, and sometimes 1, and they're wearing the same clothes every single day. But, you know, they're beautifully dressed, their hair's done, and all these different nationalities and languages playing together. So this was a little game that they were playing after school. Oh, sound. These are King's College students who were coming to do their community service program. Apparently, our program was the most popular with the group. So they would come and help with that program. I don't need that. I think I need to go back. Get out of here. Okay, the secondary and the primary classrooms, these are the secondary kids. They were actually doing a mathematical project here, but with art. Ukuleles, again, donated by Rotary, and the kids getting an opportunity to learn to play a song and then sing along with it. The aesthetics, as they're called in education, so art, music and dance are really important for healing. So we made sure that all of our classes had the opportunity alongside their English, because it's quite hard going to have, 5 hours a day of listening to somebody speaking to you in a foreign language and trying to teach you that language all day, every day, especially after the accumulated tiredness of your journey. So it's always, we like to break that up with art and music sessions. This was a trash to fashion art session that our really creative art teacher did with the secondary school kids. What I love about this is that the non-gendered outfits, like this was boy behind this, because of course different cultures have different types of dress. So to wear a long skirt type outfit is not necessarily just for females. Not a lot of girls were in this performance ceremony that we had for whānau during the intake, because if they were Muslim, they're not allowed to perform in front of others. So they were maybe doing the speaking or running the music, and they were part of the smaller presentation that we did just within the school, which was culturally acceptable. One of the boys in that group, I'll never forget, he'd had a very problematic relationship with his father, and I believe they weren't speaking. They were being supported by the mental health team, and he was in this group here, and right at the end of the performance his father came up on stage, and we were a little bit anxious because we didn't know what he would do, and he gave his son a huge hug, and it was such a poignant moment, because it was like the father could sit back and see his teenage son being normal, doing a normal sort of thing that we've done all our lives with our kids in New Zealand, and doing a fantastic thing. It was a really, really successful and popular show for families. So that event brought father and son together somehow. All of these outfits here were made from, were given those wallpaper sample booklets by some business or other, and so that's what the art teacher was using. Oops, we've lost the girl at the end of that photo with the beautiful skirt with all the flowers on it. She was an incredibly artistic girl, and she made that beautiful skirt. Her mother came by and saw what her daughter was making. The kids stayed after class to finish them.
In progress.
And her mother made the top that she was wearing. Her mother asked for some piece of paper herself, so I'll just finish with this slide. This was the primary children performing at the farewell ceremony, and one day when I was sorting out photos at home on my computer, my daughter came up to me and was just looking at this photo here, and I said to her, what's going on? What's up there? And she said, just imagine if one of those children couldn't come to New Zealand, which one would it be? And she knew that statistic, that less than 1% of refugees waiting in camps ever get resettled in a safe country. And there she was wondering who it would be. In actual fact, with that statistic, it would only be one of them who would be chosen. and all these beautiful children left behind. Okay. I'll just flick through a few more photos for you. There's a porphyry every intake, and we provide the pre-education, the preparation for that. These were some of the lovely quotes that people said about the porphyry, and I think it said a lot too about New Zealand and maybe the program too at Mangere. These here were things people wrote in English, and I don't like to correct the grammar because I often feel that the words that are used are more powerful than our corrections. I never got that much importance in my life, how tangata whenua are given us. That's what the porphyry did. We appreciate New Zealand people keep practising the old traditions. When they welcome, we feel like in our home. Before we were not in our home. We feel very important. Once I entered, the atmosphere was really energetic. So that was coming into the hall with the karanga of the women, ushering, calling them in. When different cultures mix and sing, it was awesome feeling. Love that too. We've been here for 2 weeks, but after porphyry, it started to feel like home. We can be thankful that, we have adopted these practices into our Pākehā institutions as well. So these are the kids singing Tūtera Mai. Got all their little headbands that they've made. Yeah, and some other quotes. I cried today. That was after the porphyry. And this one here I thought was a really powerful quote. You don't need to translate the words of the Māori man. Sometimes they'd call him the old man. He was about 40, I suppose. But, because respect for people who are older. You don't need to understand the words of the Māori man because we understand him from the feeling. I think that's a wonderful quote. Okay, and I think I'll finish there. If you, this person gave us permission to publish her poem, and actually I notice our Vice Chancellor at AUT has used quotes from this poem, which was on the website for a while. She hadn't heard the Welcome Home song by Dave Dobbin, but look at this. The porphyry welcomed us all, welcomed us home. Now I know where I belong. It's a beautiful poem. She wrote it in English. Can we close this PowerPoint now? Closing words. So the World Refugee Day theme for 2025 is solidarity with refugees, and hence the title of the slideshow today, people just like you and me. There are record numbers of people in the world today who've been forcibly displaced from their homes, and I hope the slideshow has helped you to feel some solidarity with people who, through no fault of their own, have been forced from their homes. They're people like us. The theme of solidarity urges us to move beyond words and take meaningful steps to support those forced to flee. Refugees don't seek charity. They just want the opportunity to rebuild their lives, to contribute to their communities, and to live with dignity. We can create change by advocating for lasting solutions to displacement. Also, in listening to and understanding the stories of refugee journeys, we're reminded that welcoming refugees strengthens societies and builds communities where everyone belongs. Finally, to quote from the UN statement on this year's theme of solidarity, through collective action, from policy change and community engagement to sharing refugee voices, we affirm that refugees are not forgotten, not alone, and not without hope. I wonder now, Viv, if you could extinguish the chalice while we recite the words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Okay, we will have the postlude soon, which Frank will play. Postlude on Foundation, arranged by Greg Wheatley. And maybe just a very quick 5-minute discussion. So if you can just quickly gather into groups. The discussion topic, which Ted will probably be able to put up for us, is: have you ever been in a social or other situation where there's been criticism about refugees or refugee resettlement programs? I know I have hundreds of times. Is there anything that you've learned from the previous talk that I gave and this one that might help you to respond more confidently in those situations? If so, please share.